Hey everybody, how's it going? Mr. H here with you on planet Earth. We've got some history, we got some prehistoric animals, gonna talk about the Steelers. Hope you're having a fantastic week. I had a really good week, and what better way to wrap it up than to hang out with you guys here on a Friday? Alrighty, well, I was thinking about the Trent Affair. Why was I thinking about that? I don't know. I'm Mr. H, right? I think about all kinds of historical stuff all the time. The Trent Affair was back there in 1861 during our Civil War. Um, Great Britain was actually hoping for a U.S. loss. We weren't enemies, we weren't friends, we're kind of frenemies with the British at the time. Britain depended on the Confederacy for a lot of cotton. The Confederacy was trying to get Britain and France to intervene in the war to try to defeat the Union to gain their independence. It's a whole complicated thing, but the French and British decided they're going to stay out of it because as much as they wanted to trip up the U.S., they weren't going to go to war and spend blood and treasure for slave owners. But it almost happened. Yeah, United States and Great Britain came close to going to war in 1861. I'm exaggerating that somewhat. I don't think it was actually going to happen. But people have written books about it, and well, it all stems from the Trent Affair. And what's the Trent Affair? The HMS Trent, a Royal Navy mail packet, well, civilian ship, cruising around, delivering the mail from the New World back to Britain, was stopped and boarded in international waters by the USS San Jacinto, which is a U.S. Navy ship. And why did we stop it? Well, it's international waters. We can stop it, right? Wrong. If you do that in international waters, you have to have some kind of a reason. And, we thought we had a reason. The British didn't. Now, if you're in U.S. waters, then we can stop you anytime, make you do the hokey pokey and, inspect the ship. But if you stop somebody on international waters and take somebody off the ship, according to Great Britain, that was the international definition of piracy, kind of what started the War of 1812. Well, that's the cartoon I was going around. The two people we yanked off that ship were two individuals who fancied themselves as envoys from the Confederate government to London, try to pull the British into the Civil War. Well, since the Confederacy is not an actual nation and was in open rebellion by U.S. laws, they're just a couple of criminals. So we stopped the ship and yanked both these guys off. The British were very upset about being boarded at gunpoint by U.S. Navy. So this cartoon was seen in two different ways. In London, looks like a very stern looking man yanking two people off a ship. I don't know who this guy is over here. I guess he's supposed to be British. And in the US, it was seen as a man doing the right thing and yanking two criminals off a ship. And if the British don't like it, yeah, well, there's really nothing you can do about it. The two guys were yanking off the ship are John Slidell and James Mason. These guys were sent by the Confederate, you want to call it government? Sure, we'll call it that. To try and get the British to come in at the war or, get some loans. The British never did. There were some mysterious loans that made their way to Richmond and they built a few ships for the Confederacy, but, the British never came in. So John Slidell and James Mason were dispatched to try and convince London to come in. Of course, they got yanked off the ship. It made the British very upset. They sent 8,000 troops to Canada. They demanded an apology, all this kind of stuff. Eventually, Abe Lincoln, having a lot of other stuff going on, that Civil War, said, yeah, maybe the captain shouldn't have done it, but he didn't exactly apologize, and sent both these guys back to London where they just sat around and failed in their mission. Meanwhile, the U.S. captain, Charles Wilkes of the U.S. Navy, USS San Jacinto, got the thanks of Congress, so not exactly punished. And weirdly enough, the British ambassador was there watching the whole thing in Congress. Gotta check the guest list there, man. Charles Wilkes was a fun guy. He was on the edge of retirement. He was also, guarding the coast against Confederate blockade runners, as you can tell. Later on, he went down to the West Indies. He was establishing coaling stations, an absolute violation of international law. I guess, it's the guy to do it. Eventually got recalled back to D.C. He got into a shouting match with the Secretary of the Navy at the time, Charles Gideon. They didn't exactly fire him. They just sort of reassigned him and eventually retired him, made him a rear admiral. And, he died in 1877. He was an interesting guy, a lot of exploration, and on his tombstone it says discoverer of the Antarctic continent. So, all right, fun guy to hang around with. Very strong opinions. Now, if, let's say if Britain was dumb enough to get into a war with us while we're in the middle of a civil war, they would have lost. And people say, Mr. H, how do you know they would have lost? Okay, I'll tell you why they would have lost. See this map? All right, so the United States is fighting the Confederate States. The U.S. is going to win. Do you know that the U.S. did not fully mobilize for that war? Yeah, and they still had the Confederacy badly, badly outnumbered everywhere. We had 92%, old drink, 92% of the industry, 92% of the rail system in the entire country. No way the Confederacy was going to win. I mean, maybe if we got tired of fighting and losing, but if you know how the Civil War went, we lost the battles, won the war. And if you lose a battle and survive, hey, you learn. And then you use that knowledge later on. But the real reason Britain would lose this war is because even though Britain's the world superpower, as you can tell by the United States, we're not exactly small, you know. and um, and if they had decided to invade Canada, there's nothing the British could do to stop it. And of course, some of my Canadian friends say, hey, Mr. H, remember the War of 1812? Yeah, it's a different situation because there's one thing you have to understand about Americans is that once we get attacked, okay, we get really mad. And Pearl Harbor anniversary is tomorrow. That's the prime example. But even with the Civil War, you know, there actually wasn't a lot of enthusiasm to fight a war against the Confederacy until they opened fire on Fort Sumter. Okay, then they got mad and they went after somebody. Now, imagine if Great Britain decides to declare war on the United States over that Trent Affair, right? We're stopping two guys from going to London who shouldn't have been going there in the first place. Then you get mad and declare war on us, and then you sent 8,000 troops to Canada. All right, 8,000 troops. That's nice. We came up with 50,000 at Gettysburg, no problem. Had another 100,000 in the West. If they mobilized completely, like a Second World War style mobilization, we would have destroyed Canada by sheer numbers, man. They would have taken Toronto, Montreal, and the rest would fall into our laps eventually. And what about the Confederacy? Worst case scenario, they would have dug in over here and just put the Confederacy on hold, taken Canada, and turned right back around again. All right, so, you know, some British and Canadians said, you know, Boulder Dash, we would win because we're the British Empire. If you're a British officer or a soldier in Canada and you see this coming at you, it's the last thing you're going to see. All right, and here's another thing you might want to consider. Suppose the U.S. is holding a grudge and comes after Canada and Britain in 1865. All right, it's a different army in 1865. 1861, okay, kind of inexperienced, but by 1865, lots of experience. No longer muskets. They got repeating rifles, but that sharp sting and the Gatling gun. Yeah, Canada would be gone if we decided to get mad at them. Here's another thing. Look down here. This guy's loading his musket while he's sitting on the ground. Okay, that tells you determination here. If we're determined to do it, we're going to do it. There's really nothing they can do to stop us. But it didn't go that way. Unfortunately, it didn't, because had it gone that way and the U.S. had conquered Canada, there probably wouldn't have been a Canadian Football League, and Mr. H would never had a chance to play there. So I guess it worked out for everybody. Hey, look at this, Jaeklopterus. This is a guy's name who discovered it, plus wing. This nice little thing, you will call it little, it's about 6 feet long, was the apex predator of the Devonian period, about 410 million years ago to about 400 million years ago. It ate basically whatever it wanted. And what made this thing so dangerous, right here, these claws. Grab stuff and shove it in its mouth and eat it. Look at the claws, too. Almost like serrated teeth. So this is a pretty big animal. We're talking about 6 feet long. Mainly saltwater, but they found fossils in places that might have been lagoons or even rivers. So kind of like a great white shark. I think it liked to operate in the salt water, but it went into fresh water every now and again. You know, get different kind of food, I guess. Here's another picture of it. I like this little caption down here, right? Jaeklopterus versus Jaeklopterus here. It looks like some kind of contest. No, it's not a contest. This is food, and this guy's eating lunch. All right, there's no contest here. Like I said, it's pretty big. There's different species of Jaeklopterus. Got a lot of relatives. This guy has got to be probably very intimidating. Look how spread on this thing's jaws. But the sheer size, man. I mean, this thing's coming through the water, and you see it, man. You're getting out of the water. I mean, this thing could hit you not just head on, but going by. I mean, so yeah, if you go back in time in the Devonian period, yeah, be careful where you walk at all times, but definitely stay out of the ocean. Now, as interesting as Jaeklopterus was, probably tastes like lobster now I think about it. The guy who's credited with his discovery is pretty interesting too. Otto Jekyll from Germany was had a big interest in ocean fossils from the Paleozoic because ocean fossils are easier to preserve. You know, that something dies or loses a tooth, it goes right in the mud and gets surrounded. Whereas something dies on land, you know, other things eat it and it gets scattered all over the place. He was a paleontologist up there in North Germany on the Baltic, and he discovered Jaeklopterus there in 1914, but he wasn't able to do more research. Why? Now look at the year, 1914, right? So First World War breaks out. So this guy, being a good German with absolutely no military experience, gets promoted to captain in the German Imperial Army. And they shove him into engineering because, you know, he digs around a lot, so he probably knows how to build stuff. Yeah, up and down. So anyway, he's there for 4 years. He doesn't see any real active combat, but he actually discovers an iguanodon in German-occupied Belgium, and he's got his soldiers digging around trying to bring it up before the war ends. You know, so anyway, then the Allies swooped through and he had to surrender. Anyhow, they didn't keep him around in the Allied prison camp because he was clearly not a career military guy. And at one point, he tried to round up U.S. and British soldiers to go finish the dig of the iguanodon. So you've got a former German Imperial Army captain, even if nominal, trying to, you know, order U.S. and British soldiers around to dig up an iguanodon. Anyway, he got tired of Germany, ended up going to China, doing some work over there with other dinosaurs where he died over there. So, you know, he's a pretty interesting dude. And, you know, if there's somebody you want to meet and if you go back in time, yeah, maybe this guy might be up on top of the list. Definitely in the top five, you know? How about that Steelers Bengals game last week? I mean, two teams with no defense, or with no offense, suddenly just lit up the scoreboard, man. I mean, Steelers went at 44-38. It just went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. At the end, we get the final score and the win. Couple things I noticed about, well, three things I noticed about this game. One, Pittsburgh's offense came alive. Everybody saw that, right? Second thing, look at the Bengals uniform here. There's this weird orange alternative thing. It looks like candy corn. You know, I mean, they should really wear this around the game closest to Halloween. And look at the field. Now I know it's you know artificial turf and everything, but I mean, usually Cincinnati it has like those worn lines, and the field looks almost white because it's been worn out and everything like that. Oh, they got the field ready for this game. I mean, clearly they were expecting a win. You know, there were tons of yellow flags out there. I mean, the terrible towels were everywhere, so it was almost like a Steeler home game. And something I just noticed about this picture. It's got to be George Pickens. What are you doing over there, man? I mean, I'm glad we won the game, and I don't think Firemuth needed your help, though. But yeah, you need to be over here blocking people, right? Just a little bit of advice here from your friend, Mr. H. And of course, Boswell was there. I think he kicked like 4 field goals. But hey, you know what? We got the win, so nobody's complaining, and we were scoring touchdowns. So as the Steelers' offense finally figured it out, you know, other people maintain it was, you know, they're playing the Bengals. How could you not do it? But nonetheless, hey, we got the win. Nobody's complaining. I just noticed there might be a hold over here, man. I think that's holding. Moving on, moving on. There's Joe Burrow. A lot of Bengal fans were upset with him. He signed a huge contract last year, promptly got injured. Hey, Bengals aren't doing very well. The Steelers might have ended their season. We don't know yet, but it's not looking good for them. What are they, 4-8, something like that? And there's Joe Burrow saying, what more do you want me to do, man? I scored 38 points. I mean, you know, nothing's ever guaranteed, but if you score 38 points, especially against a team like Pittsburgh, you know, you're reasonably certain of a victory, but, you know, not this time. Got all off season to think about it, it feels like. So we got the Brownies coming up next. We lost to them a couple weeks ago on a Thursday in the snow over in Cleveland. So now they're coming to our place. And, you know, we got a little bit of payback. We're going to smack them into the ground over here. I'm hoping it snows. I'm looking at the forecast. It's cold. It's, you know, in the 30s right now. There's snow coming next week, like on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. I got to see if I can use my powers to manipulate the universe to try and pull that snow a little bit closer, you know, like Sunday maybe, and beat them up in the snow. But, you know, as long as we win, that's all that matters, right? We get the win, Doesn't matter what the weather conditions are like. Could be snowing, could be 100 degrees. A win is a win. That's just how it goes. So Steelers sitting there at 9-3, despite not having a discernible game plan most of the time. They seem to be winging it a lot, but like they said, 9-3. Can't really complain too much about that. First place still behind the Chiefs in the conference standing and the Bills, but if we run into those guys, they might have a bit of a fight on their hands. And the way the Steelers like to hang around, yeah, a little bit of luck, and you could win a game and take down anybody. Have yourself a fantastic day. I will see you guys next week. Das vidanya.